The other day I was trying to put a rather large can of sweet potatoes into an average-sized bowl. When I was about halfway done, I began to worry about whether all the chunks of sweet potatoes would actually fit into the bowl, as it was already looking pretty full. I paused and wondered if I'd made a mistake, if I'd failed to choose the right dishware for my purpose. But then something occurred to me. What if instead of beating myself up about having chosen the wrong dishware, I chose simply to see whether I could get all of the chunks of sweet potato into the bowl? So I mashed the ones that were already in there, and I added more and mashed them, and what do you know? I was able to get them all into the bowl with room left over for butter. Yay! Now imagine you've been working toward running a 5-minute mile, and the day has come when you've decided you're going to go for it. You're going to give it all you've got. So you go to the track and you hit your stopwatch and you take off and you run as fast as you can. Only when you're done, you find that not only did you not run a 5-minute mile, you ran 5:20, which isn't even your best time. If you've set yourself up as thinking that you must run a 5-minute mile today, and you don't even manage to run a personal best, you're probably going to be pretty disappointed with your performance. But isn't it just possible that on this particular day, the time you ran was the best that you could run? You see, very often we erect standards or have them thrust upon us with the idea that they are somehow real. We view them in our minds as if they were a real wall or barrier, and if such standards are perceived as goals to be achieved, then we feel that it is necessary to climb over or bust through those walls, or we will see ourselves as failures. But these standards are illusory, insofar as we can mentally wipe them away. Imagine, for example, your goal is to get an A on a test. If you get a B, you will believe yourself to have failed. But if your goal had been to get a C, and then you got a B, you'd be pleasantly surprised with how well you did. Yet the actual grade you got in each scenario is the same. What changed is simply how you looked at it. And yet this simple shift determined whether you were happy or miserable with how you did. Just imagine if Mount Kilimanjaro could think. It might be spending all of its days moping because it's not as high as Everest. Or it might just be happy that it isn't strewn with as many corpses as Everest is. You see, when we create these standards, we also create a set of emotional outcomes, which, if we hadn't created the standards to begin with, would also not exist. Sure, when we succeed at meeting one of these standards, we may feel a kind of rush, but we also place ourselves in a situation of making ourselves miserable if we do not manage to live up to the standard, if we fail. But we needn't put ourselves in this situation at all. Now imagine that you're that runner again, and you decide that today you're just going to run as hard as you can and see what happens. Instead of beating yourself up for not living up to some imagined standard of what you thought you would be able to do on this day, at the end of your run you will say to yourself, "Hey, look at that, 5:20. I guess that was the fastest I was able to run today. Interesting." In other words, what if instead of constructing a metaphorical standard in our minds by which we then choose to judge ourselves, what if instead we simply find out what we can do? Then, instead of judging, we simply learn. And in fact, on that day that I placed those sweet potatoes into the bowl, I actually learned two important things. Not only did I learn that a large can of sweet potatoes can fit into an average-sized bowl, but I also learned that if I also eat a bowl of chili later in the day, then the next day my butthole will leak. Like all day long. I just gotta keep wiping and wiping. And that's good to know, yeah? Oh, when will it end? Oh.